Good morning, YouTube. Welcome to another video by the Happy Woodworker. In today's video, we're just going to be doing some of the sanding and staining process. So I thought I'd give you at least a few minutes just to see what I was doing here. I started the initial rough sanding in the very beginning before I had even cut any of the profile sides or any of the dovetail tracks. I like to break the sanding up instead of doing it all at once. It makes it easier on my hands. My hands don't handle the vibrating tools as easily as they used to when I was younger. So without further ado, we'll go through some of the sanding process here. Again, this is the first initial sanding that I did, and I think I was using probably 120 or 180 grit, probably 120 grit sandpaper on this. I'm using a random orbital sander in this particular shot, and we will switch over to one of my finishing sanders here in just a minute. So in this shot, I was saying earlier I discovered that I had a couple of high spots in some of these boards. My solution to that was to pull out a hand plane, particularly if you don't have a jointer or a thickness planer. I really didn't want to go into depth on using a hand plane for this, but in a nutshell, find the high spot and take it down. And I was just barely taking off shavings to get the desired effect that I needed here, and in the end it worked pretty well. Usually when you use biscuits in a joining process you can avoid some of that, but I discovered after I had glued all these up that my table saw was a little out of square, so I ended up with a little tiny bit of one board being slightly higher than the other, so I used a hand plane to even that out. I just thought I'd throw that in there. Eventually I will do a video for you guys on how to use a hand plane and how to even this stuff out, but that's for another video. So I just thought I'd give you a quick shot of what I was doing here. And here in this shot, I was saying earlier, that tools seem to, if I use a sander for a prolonged period of time, it affects my wrists and my hands, kind of get that numb, tingly feeling that drives you crazy. So this was my solution, and this is how I sanded my tambours. I just put my finishing sander in my bench vise upside down, turned it on, and I was able to run through all of my tambours this way. I used a finishing sander for this instead of the orbital sander. It just made it easier. And at one point or another I did also have all of these laid out flat for the initial rough sanding, which I did, pretty sure I did that before we ever cut the rounded over edge on the tambours. But for the finishing sanding process I'm using at least a 220 grit on these, and I'm just taking them one at a time, going through across the top, turn it around, make sure I get the other side, as you can see there. Then doing the actual sides, and I'll do the same thing as probably turn it around until I flip it over, and then we'll turn it around. That's just to make sure that I got everything sanded nice, neat, and smooth. And eventually I did also take a piece of 220 to go in around those little rounded edges and that little step that you see on the top of those. So that's how I accomplished the sanding on my tambours. I thought it was pretty creative. Alright, and then here, as you can see, we're starting the sanding, the finish sanding process on the sides. Obviously you're going to have to do finish sanding on the bottom, top, sides, inside, outside. So that's just, sanding is the biggest portion of any job. If you don't put the time in to sand, you're not going to have a good finished product. It's just as simple as that. When you're sanding, always try to make sure that you're moving with the grain as much as possible, because if you're moving across the grain, then what you're doing is severing the wood fibers and you're going to end up with all kinds of scratches. So do your best to move with the grain whenever possible, and you will come out with a really good finished product. Again, I sanded the inside up to 220 grit. And that's pretty much all there is to it. You just put the time into it, let the sander do the work for you. It doesn't take a whole lot of pressure to do this. The sander will give you a nice finished product, a nice smooth, silky smooth feel, and you'll be very happy with what you end up with. So without further ado, I'm going to give you a few more seconds of this, and then we are going to skip over to the real fun, and that is the staining process. I hope you guys have all enjoyed so far. Alright everyone, we're back. And I think I'll plug in an extra light for you guys. So we're getting ready to do our stain. I'm just using a disposable chip brush. I buy these in bulk. Come in like a pack of 36 from Harbor Freight, if anybody wants to know where to get them. I am using Sedona Red number 222 Minwax stain. Let me stir this up and get it going here. I've already had this open this morning doing a color test, so it shouldn't need stirred all that much. I have finished, at least I'm pretty sure I'm comfortable with where I'm at for sanding. I sanded these to 220 grit. That's as high as I went. And quite frankly, I think that's going to do absolutely everything that I need it to. Grab my paper towel here on the floor. It ran away on me. Okay. I shot back my bench off and blew this off by hand. And here we go. Dust is the enemy of a good finish. I'm starting with the top of these. I will do the sides last. I wanted to get the stain on the top. I'm not all that worried about the sides yet. Now you guys kind of see why my workbench always looks like somebody died on it, right? Because I just stained right on it. I'm not in the least bit worried about getting my workbench dirty. But if that bothers you, put down some kind of wax paper works well. Stain with the grain when possible. Just go back and forth until you've got the whole surface. I was kind of debating with myself as to if I was even going to stain this bread box, because honestly I like the color of the red oak. It's not necessary to stain it. In fact, a lot of the finishes that I do are just clear coat right over the wood once it's been sanded. There's nothing wrong with that. But you want to have a nice generous coating on this to let it soak in. Does not have to stay on here for long either. Okay. got to make sure you get the roundovers and those little steps in there that we cut if you're doing the same thing I did. So that's what I'm checking right now. Looks like I've got them all. Turn my air filter down. I'm going to go get another paper towel, and then when we come back we're going to... Actually, you know what? I don't even need a paper towel. I've got some spare rags up here. Oh. Old blue jeans make excellent rags. And if you don't want stain all over your hands, pull out a couple of gloves when you're doing this, because you're going to have to pick these things up where they're so small. Okay, make sure there's no dust on your rag, shake it out, and then here we go. I'm going to pick that up, slide this down, we're going to take off all the excess. Love the color. I'm obviously going to come back and do the sides. I wasn't worried about those. All I'm really worried about right now is the face that faces out that everybody sees. But it does look like I got most of the sides. So, not bad, all in all. Make sure you get into these little steps. Get the excess off of those. That way you don't have a buildup of dark color along there, unless you want it. No reason why you couldn't leave it like that. Doesn't that look good though? That's almost like looking at a Bob Ross painting coming out. Love it. Good. So alright, you get the idea here. I'm going to keep going and dry the rest of these off. And then what I'm going to do is take them, tip them all up on their sides, and I'm going to touch up the sides. So once I get the sides done, then I'll flip them over again after I dry those sides, and I'll get the other sides. The back I'm not worrying about. I'm not going to stain those, I'm not going to do anything with those. Alright folks, we're doing this one piece at a time here. I've got the bottom sanded as far as I'm going to sand it. So you blow off any dust. Follow up with a rag. Make sure you get all that dust off. For those of you who are like me, sanding is the only thing that I do not like, do not enjoy about woodworking. Pick and choose how far you've got to sand on your items. For example, this is the bottom, it's going to be inside. Ideally, there's going to be a loaf of bread sitting here at all times, and it's going to be kind of dark inside. So I have only sanded to 220 on the inside. I don't see any point to kill myself taking it all the way to 300. or 320. So here we go. We're going to start with some stain. This is just like anything else that you would stain. Just go over it. Boy, that's going to have a beautiful color, isn't it? Look at that. Let that penetrate and soak right in. Give it a nice thick coat. Love it. This is probably my favorite part of woodworking right here, is applying stain or clear coat and getting to see what my finished product is going to look like. There she is, so we're going to let her set for at least 5 minutes, and then we'll worry about taking off all the excess. Got a nice consistent color all the way across. I've actually got it wet to the point where it's got just a little bit of shine to it. Obviously that shine will come off of there as soon as I dry it, but we'll put that back on with the clear coat, which will really make the color and the grain pop. Beautiful piece of wood right there, and I love the way it came together. In fact, as you look at the way that I set the grain up, it almost looks like it's one solid piece. That's really your goal when you're doing woodworking, is to try and when you're joining boards like that, to get them to where it looks like it's one solid piece of wood. I'm very happy with the way that came out. It looks good. Okay, we're at 5 minutes later. Here goes nothing. Very gently take off the excess. Beautiful piece of wood. Absolutely beautiful. Look at that grain pattern in that. Now, this is part of the reason that I didn't use a grain filler in this either. I actually wanted to see that. That's a natural characteristic of oak that I just love. Alright, next I'm off to the sides and the top. So I've got some more sanding to do to those, so I'll go get this out of the way. I'll sand those down and we'll come back when we're staining those. Hope you've enjoyed, everyone. Happy woodworking. Here we go with our next round of stain. I'll pull out my stir stick this time in a little while. Make sure we keep our color consistent. Make my own stir sticks, by the way, just out of scrap material. Works great. So on this, there's not as much to worry about, believe it or not. I don't have to do any of this up in here because it's going to be inside and hidden by a drawer. Again, you can do it if you want. No reason why you can't. The inside, again, has been sanded to 220. The exterior is 320. Nobody's really going to see a whole lot of the inside, so we're not all that worried about it. Just putting color where people are going to see it, where it's important. So this is the last clip I'm going to include of doing the stain on this. Obviously I still have to do the top and I have to do the outside of these sides. But it's a very simple process. Apply the stain, and when you're all said and done, you're going to wipe it off just the same as you do on the other ones that I've already demonstrated. So keep in mind, when you're finishing your bread box, you may not want to polyurethane the inside completely, because the point to a bread box is to control heat, light, and moisture, and if you seal it off completely with polyurethane, then you're eliminating the ability of the wood to control the moisture content. So you may not want to polyurethane the inside, or all of it, because that kind of defeats the purpose of controlling the moisture, right? But this is where I'm going to cut this video off. Thanks for watching, everyone. And when we come back, we're going to be doing assembly and the glue up on our tambours. So I hope you've enjoyed, and we will see you on the next video. Happy woodworking, everyone.